Hi, I'm Tammany Baumgarten here in New Orleans. I'm the president of the Native Plant Initiative of Greater New Orleans. We've been working with the New Orleans town gardeners to create a native garden in our local city park. And the whole point in doing that is to be able to show people and explain to people and educate people about why it's so important to have native plants in our urban spaces and to be landscaping and gardening with native plants. A couple years ago, myself and some master gardener friends, with the support of the LSU Ag Center, started the Native Plant Initiative of Greater New Orleans. Almost overnight, we had 150 members and realized we were going to have to work for it. The fact that we received so much immediate response and so much immediate interest just showed us how important this was, and that we needed to do our best to become a source of good information on native plants for the Greater New Orleans area. And through partnerships like we have with the New Orleans town gardeners, we've been able to create a physical garden on a walking trail where residents of our community can go and see native plants. They can see the insects interacting with the plants. Hopefully they'll see birds, and it will help them envision these plants in their own spaces. It'll help them appreciate what these plants add to the surroundings and what they can add to their yards. And it also gives us a place to experiment with if you will, in using native plants in a designed garden.
So my name is Nell Howard, and I'm the vice president of the Native Plant Initiative. But I started as a master gardener in charge of projects, and one of the projects is the Native Plants in Urban Gardens project. We saw a need for native plants to be reinserted into the local nurseries, and even the lingo, the gardening lingo needed to be inclusive of these plants because they're so important.
I'm Meg Adams. I'm the Director of Environmental Stewardship at City Park and also a member of the Native Plant Initiative. I am thrilled that these different groups have come together and rejuvenated this area. When the town gardeners and the Native Plant Initiative people came together and offered to redo it, it has just been such a relief to the park because we don't really have any way to keep up an area like this. We don't have any experts who can tell us all about the native plants, but we're learning.
So what we're doing here is we're putting in a native prairie, and this is one of the first steps. We don't want to compete with weeds and other plants that we don't want there. So there was a prairie here originally, a lot of prairie plants, but it wasn't getting the maintenance it needed to stay a prairie. So a lot of trees had populated it, a lot of kind of invasive weeds had come in. So what we've done is take it down, it got mowed down, the trees got removed. There's a lot of volunteers who've come out and they're putting down cardboard. And the purpose of doing that is to smother the weeds. We don't want the light coming in and recharging the plants because light is food. And then the pine straw is going on top of that to hold the cardboard down and also be another mulch. It'll retain moisture. This will become a great place for beetles, for earthworms. There's going to be an ecosystem. We're building healthy soil. And so that way, when we have good soil and not all the weeds competing, when we plant plants in March, they're going to have a competitive edge and they'll be able to grow up and hopefully be more healthy and successful. And we're going to have about 75 different native species in here. The idea is a replica concept of a native prairie, but in a small urban area.
95% of the United States has been tilled, drained, or otherwise exploited for human purposes. And we're reaching a point in human history where we're starting to see the effects of that. We're starting to see natural decline of bird populations and insect populations and all of these things that are going to snowball eventually and really come down to affect our human way of life.
It takes over 6,000 to 9,000 small soft-bellied bugs to feed one clutch of baby birds to fledgling. So if you don't have anything that's native and it has no bugs on it, what are the birds going to eat? So we need to start from the very base of the food chain, feed that, so that the rest of the food chain, which includes human beings, can eat as well.
You know, as gardeners, we were almost brought up to think that insects in our gardens were bad, that insects in our gardens were harmful to our plants, that on the first sight of an insect in a garden, we needed to go get the spray bottle and take right care of that. And more, it's just becoming plain that insects belong in our garden, that, you know, if we stop interfering quite so much, we'll have a more natural balance that requires less human attention. I mean, the way we've been taught to garden is, quite frankly, a little exhausting. You know, you're always reaching for something to try to fix something. And in a lot of ways, nature has already kind of taken care of that. Sometimes we just need to step back and remove ourselves from the picture. I rarely treat any disease or insect in my gardens anymore. And rarely do I find that problems persist to the point where my garden fails. It just doesn't happen. Things tend to correct themselves. For those of you who may know Dan Gill, he had a 10-step rule to dealing with garden pests and garden diseases, and that was to take 10 steps back. And if you step back a little bit and don't look at your plants with a microscope, you'll find that a lot of those problems cease to be quite so important.
Hi, I'm Carol Gardner, member of the New Orleans Town Gardeners, and this is my home in Uptown New Orleans. Welcome. We took a traditionally landscaped yard and turned it into a native habitat. Believe it or not, this front yard was mostly grass, very traditionally landscaped with non-native plants, so it's been just almost a year that this yard has been in place, and it really has become a wonderful native habitat. The yard has a wonderful rhythm of, you know, when it seems like when something kind of wanes, something else waxes. I feel like there's less maintenance. Don't use pesticide. I really have had no bug problems. I guess the good bugs are taking care of the bad bugs, so it's really been a win in the maintenance category. The wildlife that has been drawn to the yard has been amazing. Bees, butterflies, hummingbirds regularly. A couple of the plants that I've just loved and people in the neighborhood have loved are the Muelley Grass, which bloomed late fall and was just magnificent, purple and flowy. And then the Rattlesnake Master, which is just behind me. That is a spiky, kind of crazy looking plant, but the pollinators love it, and it really has a great structural quality about it. So those are two that I've really just so enjoyed. As many of us know, Zone 9 is a growing paradise. It's a great place to garden, and I feel like with the world developing as quickly as it is, it's incumbent upon us to try to preserve a little bit of natural habitat, a little wildlife sanctuary, and we can do it in our yard as easy as introducing a few native plants or going full scale like this. Thanks so much for stopping by the garden. It's been a great journey for us, and I hope you all will be inspired to try natives in your yard.
I think we're at a point in time where we have to realize that our landscapes function ecologically as much as they function aesthetically. Being able to see these complex relationships between insects and birds and plants in my own gardening space has become what makes my garden so satisfying to me. So we would like all gardeners to understand that there's a certain level of stewardship that comes with owning property and managing property. 83% of the United States is privately owned. Creating habitat and creating healthy natural spaces isn't something that happens elsewhere. It's something that happens here. It's something that happens in every garden and in every green space. So it's up to every private homeowner to kind of understand this responsibility and understand this relationship and understand that conservation is something that every individual is empowered to do on their own property. It's not just something that is somebody else's job. I'm hearing an orange-crowned warbler come to eat insects off of one of my plants while I'm talking to you. So there's this joy that comes with it, there's this responsibility that comes with it, and creating viable habitats in our private spaces is possible, and it's crucial.